He stayed for her. But she was never staying for him. Distant horizon. The observation deck of Earth's orbital station Gamma 7 offered the most breathtaking view of humanity's homeworld. A swirling blue marble suspended in the velvet darkness of space. Tarian Novak pressed his palm against the reinforced glass, watching clouds dance across continents below. This would be his last view of Earth for a very long time. Dr. Novak, the Council is requesting your final authorization codes before departure. The station's AI interrupted his contemplation. They also wish to remind you that your position remains open for the next 30 days, should you reconsider. Tarian smiled faintly. Tell them I appreciate their persistence, but my decision is final. Behind him, footsteps approached. The distinctive gait of Admiral Jansen, his mentor for the past decade. Throwing away 15 years of work for a woman you've known for 3 weeks, Jansen said, not bothering with pleasantries. A non-human woman at that. Her name is Nicera, Tarian replied softly. And it's not just about her. It's about experiencing something different. Different? Jansen laughed without humor. The Meridithians are more than different, Tarian. Their biology, psychology, everything about them is alien. They experience emotions we can't even name. Tarian turned to face his mentor. Isn't that fascinating? Everything I've learned about atmospheric terraforming has prepared me to adapt. This is just personal adaptation. The memory of Nicera flashed vividly in his mind, her luminescent skin with its subtle crystalline structure, eyes the color of distant nebulae, fingers delicately tracing the contours of his face as she whispered, Your world shapes stone and air to suit your needs. I wish to shape my understanding of you, Tarian Novak. Those 3 weeks during the Galactic Conference had changed everything. Their conversations under Earth's moon, her fascination with human literature, the way she described her homeworld, of Meredith 9 with its crystal forests and resonating canyons. And then there were the nights, exploratory, tender, surprising. Different anatomies finding unexpected harmonies. She's invited me to experience her world, Tarian said. No human has ever lived among the Meridithians before. There might be reasons for that, Jansen warned. Their concept of relationships is fluid, temporary. They don't form attachments the way we do. You've read too many xenopsychology reports, Tarian said, smiling. Nicera and I have something real, something worth exploring. The station's announcement system chimed. Transport vessel Artemis requesting final boarding for passengers to the Centauri Gate. Final call for transport to Meredith 9. Jansen's expression softened. The atmospheric recovery project needs you, Tarian. Earth needs you. Earth has plenty of brilliant scientists, Tarian replied, picking up his single travel case. What it doesn't have is someone willing to truly understand the Meridithians. Maybe what I learned there can help us here someday. As they walked toward the boarding area, Jansen asked, Does she love you? Can they even feel love? Tarian remembered Nicera's words under the stars. What you call love, we call Seralath, the resonance between souls across time. I feel this with you, Tarian. Come to my world, and let us discover if it can endure. She feels something, Tarian said. Something worth crossing 17 light years to explore. At the gateway, Jansen offered a final handshake. Send transmissions when you can, and if things don't work out, I'll be fine, Tarian assured him. This isn't just about romance, it's about discovery. As the transport doors closed, Tarian watched Earth disappear from view. Ahead lay a 3-month journey through fold space, and beyond that, a crystalline world where Nicera waited. His heart raced with anticipation and fear, but mostly with hope. For her, he was leaving everything behind. For her, he would become the first human to make a home on Meredith 9. For her, he would learn what love meant across the stars. Foreign rhythms. Meredith 9 materialized before Tarian's viewport like a mirage, a crystalline sphere suspended in the void, refracting starlight into prismatic beams that stretched across thousands of kilometers. No images from Earth's probes had captured the planet's true essence. It seemed alive, pulsing with a luminosity that ebbed and flowed like tides. Atmospheric composition stabilized for human respiration in landing zone, announced the ship's AI. Temperature at primary settlement, 27.3 Celsius. Local time equivalent, dawn cycle. Tarian barely heard the words. His eyes searched the approaching landscape, crystal formations that resembled forests but sparkled with internal light, vast plains of what appeared to be flowing liquid glass, and nestled between them, the Meredithian settlement of Visthara, where Nysera awaited. The landing was smoother than any Earth touchdown, as if the planet itself welcomed the vessel. When the doors opened, Tarian's senses were immediately overwhelmed. The air carried scents he couldn't identify, sweet yet metallic, and a faint humming vibrated through his body, not unpleasant, but utterly foreign. Nysera stood at the base of the landing platform. Even among her kind, she was striking, taller than most Meredithians, her skin shifting between pale blue and violet depending on the light, with delicate crystalline patterns running along her temples and wrists. Her eyes, those vast nebulae, locked onto his. "Tarian," she said, her voice carrying that distinctive harmonic quality of her species. "You have traversed the void to be here." He stepped forward, heart racing, arms opening for an embrace. But she simply touched her forehead to his in the traditional Meredithian greeting, a gesture of respect, not passion. "I've missed you," he said, unable to hide the emotion in his voice. "Time passes differently for us," she replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come, the elders are eager to meet the human who wishes to dwell among us." The next several hours passed in a blur of introductions and ceremonies. The Meredithian elders, being so ancient their crystalline features had become nearly transparent, regarded him with something between curiosity and amusement. They spoke among themselves in their native tongue, a language of musical tones that translation devices could only approximate. "They wonder why you would leave your world for ours," Nysera explained during a rare moment alone as they walked toward her dwelling. "Few species willingly transplant themselves." "I came for you," Tarian said simply, reaching for her hand. She allowed the contact, but her fingers remained passive in his. "Yes, your human directness. I remember finding it refreshing." Her dwelling was unlike anything on Earth. Walls that seemed to grow from the ground itself, rooms that shifted and changed with the light cycles. There was no furniture as humans understood it, only formations that could be reshaped through some interaction between Meredithian biology and the crystal substrate. "You will rest here," she said, indicating a space that morphed into something resembling a bed. "I must attend to clan duties. The Festival of Resonance approaches, and my presence is required. I thought we would have time to reconnect," Tarian said, unable to hide his disappointment. Nysera paused at the threshold. "We have time, Tarian. Meredithians perceive time differently. What feels urgent to you is but a moment to us. Rest. Adjust to our gravity. Tomorrow I will show you our world." Days stretched into weeks. Tarian found himself increasingly alone, struggling to adapt to not just the physical differences of Meredith 9, its longer days, its strange foods that sustained him but offered no pleasure, its gravity that made his movements feel sluggish, but also its social landscape, which remained impenetrable. Nysera would appear and disappear, sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant. The passionate connection they had shared on Earth seemed to have evaporated in her native environment. When they did share intimate moments, they felt performative, as if she were fulfilling an obligation rather than expressing desire. "You seem troubled," observed Keldor, one of the few Meredithians who regularly spoke with him. Unlike most, Keldor showed genuine interest in Earth customs. Nicera is different here, Tarian admitted as they watched the crystal forest resonate with the setting sun. On Earth, we were closer. Keldor's expression shifted in that uniquely Meredithian way. Subtle, crystalline patterns rearranging to convey meaning. She walks between two worlds now. The diplomatic self she presented on Earth, and her true self, bound by clan obligations and traditions. What obligations? Tarian asked, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Keldor seemed surprised. Has she not told you of her promised resonance with Valen? It has been arranged since their crystallization ceremony centuries ago. The words struck Tarian like physical blows. Promised resonance? You mean marriage? Not as humans understand it, Keldor replied carefully. Something deeper, more permanent. The joining of crystalline patterns across lifetimes. He paused, studying Tarian's face. You did not know. That night, Tarian waited for Nicera in the dwelling that never felt like home, surrounded by crystal walls that seemed to whisper secrets in frequencies he couldn't understand. When she finally arrived, her luminescence dimmed with the weariness of diplomatic obligations. He searched her alien face for the woman he had fallen in love with on Earth. Who is Valen? He asked without preamble. The crystalline patterns across Nicera's skin flickered. Surprise, then something like resignation. Ah, she said softly. You have begun to learn our ways. Fading light. The crystal gardens of Visthera stood empty in the pale light of Meredith IX's triple moons. Here Tarian had found a rare sanctuary, a place where the subtle resonance of the crystal formations matched the rhythm of his human heartbeat. Tonight, however, even this harmony brought no peace. Valen is my resonance partner, Nicera had explained the previous night, her voice carrying those multi-layered harmonics that once enchanted him but now felt like deliberate obscuration. Our patterns were found compatible when we were both newly formed. You were engaged before you met me, Tarian had replied, the human word feeling childishly simple compared to the complex Meredithian concept. Engagement implies choice, negotiation, she had corrected. Resonance is inevitability, like gravity. Tarian now sat alone among the vibrating crystals, replaying their conversation as the alien stars wheeled overhead. 3 months had passed since his arrival, and with each passing day, the Nicera he had known on Earth seemed to fade, replaced by a stranger whose motivations remained opaque. Humans often seek solitude when troubled, came a voice from behind. Him. Tarian turned to find Jexal, an elder Meredithian scholar who had taken an academic interest in him since his arrival. Unlike most others, Jexal spoke directly, without the usual Meredithian circular patterns. Is it that obvious? Tarian asked. Your biochemistry shifts color when distressed. To us, your emotions are visually loud. Jexal settled beside him, crystalline limbs folding with geometric precision. You have learned about Nicera and Valen. Yes. Tarian traced patterns in the luminescent soil. What I don't understand is why she invited me here if she knew she was promised to another. Jexal's crystalline features refracted moonlight as he considered the question. Meredithians experience time and connection differently than humans. For us, all relationships have value, regardless of duration. Nicera's interest in you was genuine, just not permanent. On Earth, she spoke of Seralath, soul resonance across time. Was that just diplomatic translation? Not entirely, Jexal replied, but perhaps incomplete. Seralath comes in many forms, some last moments, some millennia. The resonance between Nicera and Valen is foundational. It supports our community. Structure. Her resonance with you is experiential, valuable for growth, understanding, but not meant to supplant what came before. Tarian felt a hollow ache spread through his chest. She never told me I was temporary. Would you have come if she had? Jexal asked with surprising gentleness. Before Tarian could answer, a familiar harmonic tone announced Nicera's approach. She appeared at the garden's edge, her form silhouetted against the glowing pathway. Tonight she wore formal attire, crystalline adornments that amplified her natural luminescence, marking her status within the clan. "Jexal, the council requests your presence," she said, her tone formal. The elder nodded and departed, leaving them alone in the pulsing garden. "You've been avoiding me," Nicera observed, moving closer. "Since learning of Valen." "I needed time to understand," Tarian replied. "In human terms, what would you call what we had on Earth?" Nicera's crystalline patterns shifted through complex arrangements, searching for translation, for understanding. "We would call it Kalidath, a crossing of paths that changes both travelers even as they continue to different destinations." "We call it misleading," Tarian said, the bitterness rising despite his efforts to contain it. "You knew I was giving up everything." "I knew you were choosing a journey," she corrected. "I never promised its destination." "When do you and Valen complete your resonance?" he asked. "The ceremony begins with the crystalline equinox, 17 days from now." Her tone softened. "I would be honored if you attended." Tarian laughed, a sharp sound against the garden's harmonies. "You want me to watch you resonate, with someone else? It would demonstrate your understanding of our ways," she said, reaching toward him with those elegant fingers that had once traced patterns of desire across his skin. He stood, pulling away from her touch. "I think I understand your ways all too well now." The following days passed in a fog of revelation and retrospection. Tarian reviewed every conversation, every intimate moment shared on Earth, searching for clues he had missed. Had she ever actually lied, or had he simply heard what he wanted to hear? Cultural misunderstanding, or deliberate deception? As Visithara prepared for the Resonance Festival, Tarian found himself increasingly isolated. The few Meridithians who had shown interest in him were now consumed with ceremonial preparations. Even Keldor and Jexal had little time for the human visitor. One evening, restless and seeking answers, Tarian ventured to the Hall of Records, a vast crystalline structure where Meridithian history was encoded in light patterns. With the help of his translation device, he searched for information about interspecies relationships. What he found shattered the last of his illusions. Temporal Cultural Exchange Program, the records called it, a systematic practice of Meridithian diplomats, forming short-term intimate bonds with representatives of other species, specifically to gain insight into their cultures. Nicera's name appeared in the archives multiple times, linked to various diplomatic missions. He was not the first, just the latest in a methodical series of exchanges. When he returned to Nicera's dwelling, he found her arranging ceremonial crystals, preparation for her resonance with Valen. She looked up as he entered, her expression shifting as she registered his emotional state. "You've been to the Hall of Records," she said. "Not a question, but a recognition." "Am I assignment or experiment?" Tarian asked, his voice unnaturally calm. "Which box do I check on your diplomatic report?" Nicera set down the crystals, her movements deliberate. "You're angry." "I'm something beyond angry," he corrected. "I'm something your language probably has a beautiful, complex word for. The specific emotion of discovering you're a cultural research project disguised as a love affair." "That's not accurate. I've read the records, Nicera. This is what you do, what your kind does. You cultivate relationships to understand other species, then return to your real lives once the data is collected. The crystalline patterns across..." Her skin flickered rapidly. Distress, confusion, or perhaps simply calculation of the optimal response. "You're simplifying something complex," she finally said. "Yes, I serve as a cultural liaison. Yes, I form connections to understand. But what exists between us is not merely data, Tarian." "Then what is it?" he demanded. "Because from where I Stand. It looks like I gave up my world for someone who was never actually offering me a place in hers. Shattered illusions. Dawn broke over Vaisthara, casting rainbow refractions through the crystal spires of the city. Tarion stood at the edge of the settlement, a single travel case at his feet, the same one he had brought from Earth, now containing the few possessions he had accumulated during his time on Meredith 9. He had contacted Earth's Interstellar Transport Authority the previous night. A science vessel would be passing through the nearby system in 3 days. They had agreed to divert and retrieve him. "You're leaving." Nicera's voice came from behind him, her harmonics subdued, almost flat. Tarion didn't turn. "There's nothing for me here." "There is much you haven't experienced," she countered, moving to stand beside him. "The Resonance Festival alone is considered one of the great wonders of the known galaxy." "I didn't come for festivals," Tarion said. "I came for you." Silence settled between them, punctuated only by the faint crystalline hum that permeated the planet's atmosphere. Finally, Nicera spoke again. "Will you at least allow me to explain, not as justification, but as understanding, before you leave?" Tarion nodded once, still gazing out at the crystalline landscape that had never felt like home. "My people do not experience attachment as humans do," she began. "Our existence spans centuries. We see relationships as movements in a greater symphony, not as permanent states. When I met you on Earth, I experienced genuine fascination. Your passion, your immediacy, your capacity for connection, despite your brief lifespan." "Was any of it real?" Tarion asked. "All of it was real," she insisted. "But real means different things to our species. What feels eternal to a human is but a moment to a Meredithian. I never intended deception." "Intent doesn't change impact," Tarion replied, finally turning to face her. In the morning light, her crystalline features seemed more alien than ever. "You knew human customs. You understood our concepts of commitment." "I understood the words, not their weight," she countered. "Just as you understood Seralath as equivalent to love, but missed its temporal context. We both translated imperfectly." Tarion laughed without humor. "So this is a translation error? I gave up my career, my home, my world, because I misunderstood a semantic nuance? You gave those things up because you sought something beyond your known existence," Nicera said. "Was that solely about me, or about your own desire for expansion?" The question struck deeper than Tarion expected. He had been so certain his decision was about Nicera, but hadn't there been something more? The allure of the unknown, the chance to experience what no human had before? "I would not have come if I'd known about Valen," he said finally. "Perhaps," Nicera acknowledged. "And that would have been your loss as well as mine. What we shared has value, Tarion, even if it wasn't eternal." "Value for whom?" he asked. "For your research? For your cultural exchange program?" "For both of us," she said, her crystalline patterns shifting to configurations he had never learned to read. "I have experienced human connection through you. I understand things about your kind that no text could convey. And you have glimpsed existence beyond human parameters. Few of your kind can claim such perspective." A signal chimed from Tarion's communication device, the transport ship acknowledging his request for passage. "I should prepare," he said, reaching for his case. "Wait," Nicera said, her tone carrying an urgency he had rarely heard from her. "Before you go, there is something you should see. Something I had planned to share after the Resonance Festival." Curiosity overcame his resentment. "What is it?" "Come with me to the Reflection Caverns," she said. "It will answer questions you haven't thought to ask." Against his better judgment, Tarion followed her through the Crystal City one last time. They passed the preparations for the Resonance Festival, elaborate structures being grown from the living crystal of the planet, Meredithians in ceremonial attire, practicing harmonic sequences that made the air itself vibrate. The reflection. Caverns lay beneath the city, accessible through a spiraling passage that descended deep into the planet's crust. As they walked, the ambient temperature rose, and the crystalline structures grew more complex, more ancient. Few outsiders have been permitted here, Nicera said as they reached a vast underground chamber. This is the heart of our collective memory. The cavern walls were lined with crystals unlike any Tarian had seen on the surface, deeper in color, more complex in structure. They seemed to pulse with an internal light that responded to their presence. Touch the central formation, Nicera instructed, indicating a column of midnight blue crystal that rose from the cavern floor. Hesitantly, Tarian placed his palm against the cool surface. Immediately, the crystal blazed with light, and images flooded his mind, not just visual, but emotional, sensory experiences beyond human vocabulary. He felt, saw, experienced Nicera's first awareness of him at the Galactic Conference, her genuine curiosity, her fascination with his emotional intensity. He experienced their relationship from her perspective, the discovery, the connection that was indeed real, if differently understood. Most startlingly, he experienced her internal conflict upon returning to Meredith 9, her attempt to reconcile, her genuine attachment to him with her preordained resonance with Valen, her struggle to translate concepts between fundamentally different modes of existence. When he finally pulled his hand away, Tarian was trembling. That was the truth, Nicera said simply. As I experienced it, no translation, no interpretation. You did care, Tarian said, the realization both healing and wounding simultaneously. I do care, she corrected, in my way, not as you needed, perhaps, but truly, nonetheless. Beyond the stars. The transport vessel Helios hung in orbit above, Meredith 9, its engines pulsing with barely contained energy. In the observation lounge, Tarian watched the crystalline planet rotate below, beautiful, mysterious, and ultimately not his to claim. Final preparations for departure complete, announced the ship's AI. Jump to fold space in 20 minutes, Tarian pressed his hand against the viewport, a mirror of his gesture 3 months earlier when leaving Earth. Then, his heart had been full of anticipation and hope. Now it carried a more complex cargo, grief, wisdom, and something else he couldn't quite name. The door to the lounge slid open, revealing Captain Marin, a weathered woman with the characteristic lean build of someone who had spent decades in variable gravity. Unusual to pick up a single passenger from Meredith 9, she noted, joining him at the viewport. Even more unusual for that passenger to be human. Their world isn't exactly hospitable to our kind. It wasn't the planet that was inhospitable, Tarian replied. Just a fundamental incompatibility of existence. Marin nodded as if she understood. We've got a 6-week journey back to Earth, plenty of time to readjust to human company. After she left, Tarian removed a small object from his pocket, a fragment of crystal Nicera had given him just before he boarded the shuttle to the transport ship. It caught the starlight, refracting it into complex patterns across his palm. There, final conversation replayed in his mind. They had stood at the shuttle platform, the first light of day breaking over the crystal spires of Vaisthara. Around them, Meredithian daily life continued, oblivious to the human departure that felt so momentous to him, so incidental to them. I want to thank you, Nicera had said, her voice carrying that harmonic quality he would never hear again. Tarian had looked at her in surprise. Thank me? For what? For showing me something my kind rarely experiences, the intensity of human connection. Her crystalline features had shifted in that way that signified deep emotion. We live so long that we dilute our attachments across centuries. You taught me what it means to feel everything in a moment. Was it worth it? He had asked, genuinely curious despite his hurt. It changed me, she had replied. For a time I considered breaking my resonance with Valen. Something unprecedented in our history. I considered following your human pattern of connection. The admission had stunned him. Why didn't you? Because in the end, I am Meredithian. My patterns are set by millennia of evolution and culture. She had reached out, touching his face with those delicate fingers. But know this, Tarian Novak. You made an immortal being question eternity. Few can claim such impact. She had pressed the crystal fragment into his hand then. This is encoded with my true name, not the sound humans call me, but the resonance pattern that defines my existence. Keep it, if you wish to remember. I couldn't forget if I tried, he had told her. Now, as the ship prepared to jump into fold space, Tarian held the crystal up to the starlight one last time. Within its structure, complex patterns shifted and changed, alive in some way he would never fully understand. The Helios's engines hummed with increasing intensity. Soon they would break orbit, and Meredith 9 would fade from view, becoming just another bright point in an endless sea of stars. Captain Marin's voice came over the communication system. All passengers secure for fold space transition. Departure in 5 minutes. Tarian carefully placed the crystal fragment in a secure pocket. Whatever happened next, whether he returned to his former life or charted a new course, he would carry this experience with him. Not just the pain of misunderstanding, but the rare perspective of having glimpsed love across the divide of fundamentally different existences. As the countdown to departure began, Tarian found himself smiling, a small, bittersweet expression, but genuine nonetheless. He had traveled across 17 light years for love. The journey had not ended as he'd expected, but perhaps that wasn't failure. Perhaps the journey itself was the point. The stars outside the viewport began to stretch as the fold space drive engaged. Meredith 9 disappeared from view, its crystalline beauty compressed to a single point of light before vanishing entirely. Tarian closed his eyes as the ship accelerated beyond conventional physics. He had stayed for her, knowing now she was never staying for him. Yet something remained, not the relationship he had sought, but something equally valuable. The understanding that love could be real across the stars, even when it didn't last. And sometimes, the most profound connections were the ones that taught us how to let go. When he opened his eyes again, the familiar patterns of space had been replaced by the swirling colors of fold space. Ahead lay Earth, the past, and a future now unwritten. Behind lay a crystalline world and a brief connection that had, in its way, altered the patterns of two beings from different worlds. It was enough. It had to be.